In this video, we'll explore conversational AI bots. A conversational AI bot is a software solution employing artificial intelligence and is designed to communicate with humans. These bots are meant to provide an experience that emulates human interaction. Some conversational AI bots leverage questions and answers from a knowledge base in order to maintain dialogue with humans and provide answers to common questions that the users may have. Some advanced bots also leverage advances in natural language processing and natural language understanding to augment and generate seemingly real conversational dialogue. In essence, they are designed to respond to queries with human-like dialogue. After all, the idea behind such bots is to emulate a human in the background in such a way that when done properly, an AI bot would be virtually indistinguishable from a human agent on the other end. AI bots are capable of processing human communication both in spoken dialogue and also in the form of text, taking advantage of natural language processing. The bots can then take some action based on its dialogue with the human end user. So how does conversational AI work? Well, there is a sequence that goes like this. Essentially, AI bots use natural language processing to understand the speech or text submitted to it by a human end user. The AI bot then accesses a knowledge base to determine the most appropriate response or action to take based on the conversation. The AI bot then creates a response using what it's determined as the most appropriate action or answer based on the question and the context of the conversation. The AI bot's response can be in text format, or they can also use text-to-speech for vocal or verbal answers if applicable based on the medium in use. Now let's consider why conversational AI bots are so popular. They're used for several reasons, including the fact that they provide a self-service, easy-to-use information retrieval system for humans. They are supposed to make it easier for us humans to get quick answers to common questions. Let's consider some areas where conversational AI is common. One popular area that's incorporated conversational AI is customer support. A user typically wants to quickly and easily find answers to common predefined questions. This process can be automated using conversational AI in such a way that it is quicker and easier than for the customer to have to call and wait for a support agent or sift through a large, frequently asked questions or FAQ database. Another area is employee support, which is similar to customer support. But employee support may also involve automated FAQs and diagnoses for common questions that they may have regarding an onboarding process or for some aspect of a business process within the organization. Again, it's supposed to be quicker and easier for the end user, but that's only half the equation, really. It's also a more efficient and cost-effective way for an organization to provide answers to common questions than having that responsibility placed on another employee, freeing them up to do more important things within the organization. Booking systems are also excellent candidates for conversational AI bots. For example, a booking system could allow an end user to book a flight, but then take that conversation one step further by asking if they also need to book accommodations, and then take that even one step further again by asking if the human end user also requires transportation to and from the airport or the railway station or whatever the form of transportation is. Another common use for conversational AI is in providing the services of a digital or a personal assistant. For example, you can have the digital assistant, also referred to as a virtual assistant in Azure Cognitive Services, create to-do lists or shopping lists to create automated responses or automated emails on your behalf, and to perform many other tasks that a human personal assistant would typically perform. Now, before we discuss the benefits of conversational AI, let's consider where we are in terms of modern technology. Devices are generally smaller now, but applications, systems, and menus for interacting through devices are generally growing in complexity. Many times, users don't know how to access or use one feature over another, but they do know what they want to do, and they know how to articulate that by voice, chat, and/or text. Consequently, conversational AI is starting to take the place of more traditional user interfaces with human-like dialogues instead. The concept behind the use of conversational AI is that organizations can provide a simpler and more intuitive experience for end users and help streamline employee workflows. The whole process can be faster, more effective, and more efficient. Advances in natural language processing and natural language understanding have made this all possible. So now, having established where we're at, let's discuss the benefits of conversational AI. Conversational AI can incorporate the use of sentiment analysis to understand the end user's sentiment in a conversation, whether they're frustrated or perhaps they're even angry. And conversational AI can handle those types of situations in a more automated, consistent, and objective way, which can be quite disarming in situations where, with a human agent, perhaps could escalate. Communication via a conversational AI bot can scale almost limitlessly. And the fact is that it is always available 365, 24/7, and it will always answer as quickly as it is designed to. It can be an excellent training or teaching source in the workplace, incorporating the use of natural language interface rather than the traditional clunky and inefficient user interface. It can also provide for better, more concise, and convenient user interactions. Some limitations of conversational AI, or rather some challenges, include the fact that quick or immediate responses are necessary in order for the conversation to feel natural. There aren't long pauses between questions and answers in a typical human conversation, particularly where someone is asking a question of another party considered to be a source of knowledge. So again, that means fast responses are necessary. So if there's a requirement to look something up, or if the bot doesn't quite understand it, it can feel like it's not a natural discussion. In addition, typical knowledge bases are difficult to capture or build the questions and answers in a form that is effective and usable by an AI bot. The responses must also be accurate to prevent end user frustration and outright refusal to use such a platform. And finally, another challenge or limitation of conversational AI is the possibility of miscommunication. For example, there may be technical terms, medical terms, or various other meta-language terms that the bot may not be familiar with, or even miscommunication due to heavy accents from the end user. These can cause problems with the AI bot in understanding the conversation and therefore responding to the end user accurately. To address the conversational AI bot market, Microsoft Azure provides the Azure Bot services as a collection of tools for creating, deploying, and maintaining conversational AI bots. Q&A Maker, one of Azure's cognitive services, is a cloud-based natural language processing service with which we can generate a natural conversational interaction concerning organizational data. With Q&A Maker, we can design input and output in the form of questions and answers using the convenient interactive Q&A Maker user interface. This tool allows us to generate questions and answers from a variety of sources, including manual generation, but also by submitting specific questions and answers in a predefined format, or even by submitting an existing FAQ type URL from which it will attempt to extract the questions and answers. The Azure Bot service can be used to create and deploy a bot that's capable of interacting with users in a seemingly natural conversational way, and can integrate cognitive services like Q&A Maker so that when an end user engages in a conversation with the bot, It's actually looking up the questions and answers in the background with the FAQ built with Q&A Maker and responding with a dialogue type that seems natural to the end user. In this video, we'll explore some of the common business and personal use cases for a conversational bot. One of the most common uses for conversational AI bots is in the field of customer engagement. The idea here is to be there for the end user or potential customer when they need answers. We start with a prospect and we work all the way through the sales cycle to customer and all the way through to ongoing support. For example, customers may have questions about a service or product before buying. Typically, organizations maintain FAQs or some similar construct where the end user can look up answers to common questions. And people need answers now. Modern technology has made this increasingly difficult due to the fact that modern devices are generally smaller. However, the applications, systems, and menus for interacting through these devices have grown in complexity. Traditional UIs make this much more challenging because they were never meant to address this complexity and the diminutive size of modern devices. What hasn't changed is that potential customers and current customers alike still require answers, and they won't wait for too long. Although users know what they want to do and they know how to articulate what they want to do, traditional UIs are just not as effective and efficient as they could be. Enter conversational AI bots. With advances in natural language processing and natural language understanding, these bots can quickly and easily provide answers to end users via a chat interface, a voice call, or even from within an app 365, 24/7. Bots can also provide answers via automated email based on predefined questions and answers. For example, with Azure Bot services and Q&A Maker, we can generate a bot and integrate it into an email service whereby the end user could send an email with a question in the subject line, and the conversational bot would respond with an email detailing the most appropriate response to the query for that end user. Conversational bots can also be instrumental in leveraging the tremendous volumes of information and massive audience available via social media. While bots can promote a brand's offering and help potential customers along in a transaction, they can also be more proactive by examining and leveraging trends to recommend products or services to people. Intelligent bots use AI and relevant questioning to determine what people want, and then can direct them in an efficient and effective way much faster than the typical online store can. Based on people's questions, bots are able to collect large amounts of relevant data, helping the organization find out what consumers are really interested in. This provides a powerful knowledge base that can help the organization determine next steps in marketing a product placement simply because they better understand their potential market. Another important aspect of conversational bots in terms of customer engagement is the ability to have personalized conversations and adapt the conversations spontaneously. While natural language processing advances allow us to perform wide-ranging sentiment analysis on social media platforms by analyzing conversations with respect to our products and services, conversational bots can take that one step further by actually engaging in conversations to understand exactly how customers view our products and services. What are their strengths and weaknesses? What kind of features are they looking for? In short, we want to be able to analyze, based on conversations, what is going to draw consumers to our products and services, and just as importantly, what is going to keep them using our products and services. That is light years ahead of, say, for example, email marketing campaigns or robotic posts to social media platforms. Conversational bots can leverage deep learning technology to tailor the message and the tone while interacting with customers and potential consumers. Moreover, imagine having the capability to engage users directly while they are making what potentially could be a negative review and addressing their concerns right then and there, eventually eliminating that potential negative review and turning it instead into a positive one. Now let's consider personal assistants. When considering personal or digital assistants, common uses include time management. For example, the personal assistant can not only schedule upcoming tasks or important events, but also provide us with already scheduled tasks or important events, including detailed information about start times, the people involved, the context of the conversation, the history of prior conversations, essentially anything that we would ask a real human personal assistant to do. Personal assistants can provide booking services for us, and not just in a simple linear booking arrangement. A personal assistant can, for example, not only book a flight or a railway ticket, but can also use multi-turn dialogues in an intelligent manner, asking us if we also need to make hotel or other lodging accommodations. Personal assistants can be instrumental in providing us with relevant and useful information. Imagine we want to determine what time it is on a different continent in a different city. Well, the personal assistant could pull that information up immediately. Now, consider employee engagement. What is the most important asset of an organization? I could argue that would be the people that work there, the human resources. With that in mind, consider how employee engagement can be enhanced with conversational bots. First, with respect to training or onboarding, a conversational bot can answer questions from new employees through convenient conversational interface. Bots can not only provide instructions on the organization's policies, required paperwork, or completing forms, but they can also provide training for personal and skill development initiatives within the organization, providing a more effective and efficient way for the HR department to provide timely information 365 24/7 to its employees. This extends into managing those employees as well, helping them achieve their goals, improving morale, and helping retain important, organizationally knowledgeable people. Just like customer engagement, employees will appreciate and gravitate to situations where they can obtain information that they need in an instant. Furthermore, these interactions can be monitored and analyzed to determine sentiment and hence provide a path forward for improvement. And finally, knowledge exchange. Conversational bots can assist in finding information for employees about the organization, about assets, about schedules, or about changes. And here, knowledge exchange is the objective. So instead of having a human employee have to reach out to another person, which requires a time commitment from the source of knowledge, that employee can instead query the conversational bot to obtain that information for them, and this information can be provided instantly, freeing up time for both the person querying and the person that is in possession of the knowledge. In this demo, I'll create a knowledge base using Q&A Maker. To get started, I've signed in to qnamaker.ai with my Azure account. So again, that's qnamaker.ai. There are two options that I'm interested in at the top of the page: My Knowledge Bases and Create a Knowledge Base. First, I'll click My Knowledge Bases. And this shows that I have no knowledge bases yet, which is as it should be because I haven't created one yet. Okay, so I'll go and click Create a Knowledge Base. Now this is a 5-step process, and in the first step, we need to go over to Microsoft Azure and create a Q&A service. So I'll click Create a Q&A Service in step 1. This opens a new tab and takes me over to Microsoft Azure, and because I've been here before, my account credentials have been cached, so I'm logged in automatically. Now at this point, I'm on the Create page. Notice the Managed Preview checkbox. If we were to check that, the telemetry and compute resources would be automatically included with our Q&A Maker resource. We're not going to use that at this point. So scrolling down, I'm going to specify the project details. For subscription, I'll leave the default free trial. For resource group, if I had a resource group, then I could click the down arrow and select one. I don't have one at this point, so I'll click Create New under the Resource Group field. Now, there is a problem with this. If I specify a different resource group name, because typically in some projects, I like to use the RG prefix for resource groups. But if I do that here, what's going to happen is it's going to rename it at the end, and I'll see that in my review if I were to name it something different. So I'm just going to name it the same as my Q&A Maker service, and that's going to be Q&A-101. And I'll specify that name in the name field and click OK. Now for resource group location, I'll leave the default East US. For my Q&A Maker service name, again, I'll specify the same name, Q&A-101. Now I'll click in the pricing tier field and I'll select the free pricing tier. Now under Azure search details, for Azure search location, the default is East US. I'll leave that. And for Azure search pricing tier, I'll click inside the Azure search pricing tier field. That opens up the drop-down, and I'll select free F 3 indexes. And that's going to be more than enough resources for my demo. Okay, scrolling down, now my app service details. Now the app name defaults to the name of my Q&A Maker service. And I'm not going to change that. I'm going to leave that as is. So it's Q&A-101. For website location, I'll leave the default East US. Scrolling down, I'm going to click to disable App Insights. I'm not going to include App Insights in this demo. So I'll click Disable. Okay, and now scrolling all the way down, I'll click Next, Tags. Now at this point, if I wanted to specify some tags, I could. I won't do that at this time. Instead, I'll click Next, Review plus Create. Now if I review, everything looks good, I'll click Create. Now at this point, Azure goes off and validates the settings that I've specified, and when everything's okay, it'll start provisioning and deploying my resources. All right, now on the overview page, a notification indicates that deployment is in progress. Okay, and we'll see those resources populated under deployment details. And when it's done, we'll see a notification saying deployment was successful. And at that point, we can go back to Q&A Maker and complete our knowledge base. This typically takes less than a minute. Okay, so deployment succeeded. If I click Go to Resource, that takes me to the resource page. And in the left menu, I have a number of different options. I'm not going to change any settings at this point, so I'm just going to go back to Q&A Maker. So I'll click the Q&A Maker tab. Okay, now I've done step 1. Now I'm going to go down to step 2. First, I'll click Refresh to pick up all the settings that I just supplied in Microsoft Azure. Okay, and the Azure Directory ID is populated by default with my Azure Directory ID. The Azure subscription name, I'll click to open the drop-down list, and I'll select Free Trial. Then for Azure Q&A Service, again, I'll select Q&A-101. That's the service that we just created. And now you may see a notification indicating no endpoint keys found. That happens because if it's busy over in Azure, it may take a couple of minutes for those endpoint keys to be populated, and so you may get this notification. So if you wait a couple of minutes, you should be all right. So I'll click OK to close this notification. And now I'll click Refresh again. I'll select my Q&A service again. That's Q&A-101. And now it picked up the endpoint keys. Okay, so now I'll click to expand the Select Language dropdown, and I'll select English under Chit Chat and Extraction Available. Now I'll scroll down, step 3. I name my knowledge base. I'm going to name my knowledge base something original like my KB. Now step 4 is populate your KB. This is totally optional at this point, and we're going to skip by this step at this time. So this just allows us to specify the questions and answers here. So we're going to skip by this at this point. And scrolling down to step 5, create your KB. I'll click create your KB. And a notification appears telling us that this should only take a minute. It doesn't take very long at all at this point, especially because we didn't populate our knowledge base with any question and answer pairs. Okay, and now it's done. We're taken to our knowledge base page. And at the top of this page, we have now an Edit tab, a Publish tab, Settings tab. We have a Save and Train and a Test option. Now, if I go back to My Knowledge Bases by clicking My Knowledge Bases in the band at the top of the window, I'll see My KB, the knowledge base that we just created. Okay, so we've successfully created a knowledge base using Q&A Maker. In this demo, I will populate and train a knowledge base. To get started, I've opened my browser and I've signed into Q&A Maker with my Azure account. So that's my Q&A Maker tab. I've also got a Frequently Asked Questions page open. So that's an FAQ page for Microsoft software downloads. I'll use that later on to generate some question and answer pairs. And I've also got my home page for my Microsoft Azure account open, just in case I have to access any of my Q&A Maker resources. Okay, so back to Q&A Maker, so I'll click the Q&A Maker tab. To access my knowledge bases, I'll click My Knowledge Bases at the top of the page. And I have one knowledge base named My KB. I'll click to open the knowledge base page. On the knowledge base page, I have the Edit, Publish, and Settings tabs at the top of the window, and the Save and Train and Test options. In Edit, we can manually add Q&A pairs, which is what we'll do here. I can also publish from here, and I can access settings for this page, and actually I can add question and answer pairs here as well. So if I click on Settings, scrolling down, there are several options for adding question and answer pairs. We'll review that when we go and create another knowledge base and use the Frequently Asked Questions page from Microsoft.com to create some question and answer pairs. So let's go back to the Edit tab. So I'll click Edit. Now I need to add some question and answer pairs. Note the Enable Rich Editor setting. This enables a handy little rich editor that allows us to format our answers. This is enabled by default, so we'll leave it enabled. To get started then, I'll select Add Q&A Pair. Okay, so for my first question, I'll specify something very simple like, how do I cancel my account? Okay, that's good. Now notice below that the option to add alternative phrasing. This allows us to add alternative ways that a question is phrased. For example, here I could say, close my account. So I'll do that. I'll click Add Alternative Phrasing, and I'll specify close my account. Okay, now we add an answer. I'll select Enter an Answer, and I'll type Select Cancel from the Account Management options. Okay, that's good. Now I'll click to add another question and answer pair. So for this question, I'll ask, how do I upgrade my account? And the answer here will be a multi-turn answer. And for that, I will add a follow-up prompt. Follow-up prompts can be used to guide users through some type of conversational flow. For example, in some situations, questions just can't be answered in a single turn. And when you're designing your conversations, you should consider that a user may ask a question that requires additional dialogue to determine what the appropriate answer should be. Q&A Maker makes this possible by presenting additional follow-up prompts to the user. This is called a multi-turn conversation, and in such a conversation, when a user asks a question, Q&A Maker responds with the answer along with any required follow-up prompts. And this allows you to present the follow-up questions to the user as choices. As before, I'll start by selecting Enter an Answer, and the answer here will be you can upgrade a business account or a personal account. And I'll specify a follow-up prompt. So I'll click Add Follow-up Prompt, and that opens the follow-up prompt dialog. So here, the display text will be business, and now link to Q&A. So I can either link to a specific Q&A, or I can specify an answer here. So I'll just click inside the link to Q&A text box, and I'll specify select business as the account type and select upgrade. Okay, so that's good. Now, note the context only checkbox. When this is checked, it means that the follow-up will not be understood outside the contextual flow of this conversation. And that just makes sense in this conversational flow. So I'll click to check the context only checkbox, and I'll click Save. Okay, scrolling down, notice the question, how do I upgrade my account? Our original question, and the original answer beside it, you can upgrade a business account or a personal account. And under that, we have business in a box. And this is because it's going to be presented as an option. And when the user selects that option, then they'll see the answer above, which is select business as the account type and select upgrade. Okay, so now let's do the same thing for personal accounts. I'll click Add Follow-up Prompt, and this time I'll specify personal as the follow-up prompt. Okay, and now I'll specify select personal as the account type and select upgrade. And since this is a new answer, the Create New notification appears below. And I'll click Context Only for this one as well. Scroll down and click Save to close the follow-up prompt dialog and save that follow-up prompt. Okay, so now we can see that both of those choices are associated with how do I upgrade my account. Now, once I've made changes, there will be an edited notification displayed at the top of the window beside the knowledge base name. Okay, and that signals that it's now time to train the knowledge base. Now, when we train the knowledge base, it trains it so that when users enter their questions using different phrases and formats, it can have them automatically linked to our question and answer pairs. This is very easy. All I do is select Save and Train at the top of the page. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'll click Save and Train. Okay, now this process should only take a few seconds. And done. So now my knowledge base has been saved and trained, and the edited notification no longer appears beside the knowledge base name. So now let's go back to My Knowledge Bases. So I'll click My Knowledge Bases at the top of the window. Now if I wanted to, I could create a new knowledge base. So I'll click Create a Knowledge Base. Now step 1 is create a Q&A service. I already have a Q&A service created, so I can skip step 1. So now under step 2, I'll click Refresh. I have my Microsoft Azure Directory ID automatically populated. For my Azure subscription name, I'll select my free trial. For the Azure Q&A service, I'll click inside the Select Service field and I'll select Q&A-101. And the language is English. I can't change that at this point. Now the name of my knowledge base, I'll call this my KB2. Now to populate the knowledge base, we have several options. We've already seen how to manually add question and answer pairs, but we can also specify tab separated values. So that's a .tsv file. We can specify PDF or Word docs, and these are typically in the form of FAQs or user manuals or something like that. We also have the possibility of specifying an Excel document, and this is a structured Q&A file. And with this type of resource, there are 2 columns, one for questions, and the other column has the answers. And Q&A Maker can extract these from the Excel doc. Okay, we can also check the Enable Multi-Turn Extraction from URLs, PDF, or docx files. And this will allow Q&A Maker to attempt to extract multi-turn question and answer pairs from whatever document or URL that I specify, which brings us to the URL possibility. So what we can do here is we can specify a URL. And this is usually like an FAQ page, maybe a support page, or something that is already laid out or formatted with questions and answers. And when you specify the URL, Q&A Maker will attempt to extract the question and answer pairs from the page. Okay, so that's why I have my frequently asked questions page open. So I've already copied this URL. That's www.microsoft.com/en-us/software-download/FAQ. And I'm going to go over and paste that in the URL field for our question and answer pairs. And I'll specify that URL in the URL field. So I'll right click and select paste. Now we also have a chit chat option, which allows the bot to answer all kinds of small talk type questions. It kind of gives your bot, when you create it, a personality type to answer small talk type questions. I won't do that at this time, so I will leave none selected. And then create your KB. So I'll go ahead and select create your KB. And now Q&A Maker is crawling the content that I specified in that URL field, and it will extract the Q&A pairs. Okay, and now it's complete, and it redirects me to my KB2 page where I can see the question and answer pairs that I've got. So these were automatically extracted from that URL that I specified. Okay, and the same with this knowledge base as in my other knowledge base. I can select Save and Train here to save and train this knowledge base. I'm actually not going to do that. For this demo and for future demos, I only want to have a simple knowledge base that can demonstrate the different aspects of Q&A Maker and the Azure Bot service. So at this point, I'm done. I'm going to go back to My Knowledge Bases by clicking My Knowledge Bases at the top of the window, and I'm going to click the trash icon beside My KB2 to delete my new knowledge base, My KB2. And in the Delete My KB2 dialog, I'll click Delete. And we're done. So with that, we've actually populated and trained a knowledge base in Q&A Maker. In this demo, I'll publish and test a knowledge base. All right, to get started, I've opened my browser and I've navigated to QAMaker.ai and signed in with my Azure account. I have a second tab open to API Tester, which is a web-based application for testing API endpoints. And I have my dashboard in Microsoft Azure open just in case I need to access any of my resources with my Q&A service. Okay, back to Q&A Maker. I'll click My Knowledge Bases at the top of the window. And I have one knowledge base. It's called MyKB. I'll click MyKB to open my knowledge base. And that opens the knowledge base to the Edit tab. I'm going to publish this knowledge base. But before I do that, first, I can test my knowledge base right here. Now, this is not testing the API endpoints. This is just testing the functionality of the knowledge base here. So let's go ahead and do that. I'll select Test. And now, for my question, I'll specify how do I upgrade my account. Now, this should respond with an answer and two options, business or personal. This is a multi-turn conversation that I set up when I configured my questions and answers. Okay, so let's go ahead. How do I upgrade my account? I'll press Enter. And it responds with the answer that I specified when I set up this question and answer pair, along with the two options, business and personal, exactly as I expected. Okay, now under my question, I can click on Inspect, and that expands this little chat window. And in the middle, I see the question. I can also specify alternative phrasing here. And on the right is the answer, along with a confidence score. Now for this one, I see a confidence score of 100 because the question as specified in the chat window when I typed, how do I upgrade my account? It matches the exact phrase that I specified when I created this question and answer pair. Therefore, we see a confidence score of 100, and we'll see a lower confidence score if we specify something other than the exact phrase. Okay, back to the chat window, and I'll select Start Over. Now in the message field, I'll type just simply upgrade. And remember, when we train a knowledge base, Q&A Maker tries to anticipate different ways that I can phrase this question. Okay, so I'll press enter, and it comes back with the same answer as I got last time. Now if I click inspect this time, I'll see that the confidence score is only 62. And that's because I used just one word. It's not an exact match. Okay, so let's click test to close the test chat window. And now I'll click the publish tab. Okay, now when I publish my knowledge base, what's going to happen is it's going to move my questions and answers from a test index to a production index in Azure Search. Accordingly, when published, our knowledge base endpoint becomes available for us to use in a bot or app, so I should be able to test it with API Tester. So let's go ahead and do that. I'll click publish. And this shouldn't take very long, and it didn't take very long. Now, on the success page, I can create a bot over in Azure Portal by selecting Create Bot, or view all my bots on the Azure Portal by selecting View. Q&A Maker also conveniently provides me with a couple of HTTP requests, one formatted for Postman and the other for CURL. I'll select CURL. I'm going to copy and paste these values over in API Tester. So first I'll grab the URL. So I'll highlight the URL all the way over to Generate Answer. I'll right click, select Copy, click on API Tester. Now scrolling down, I'll paste that value in the URL field. So I'll place my cursor in the URL field and press Ctrl V. Now this is going to be a post request, so I'll click the down arrow and select Post. And now I need some post data, and I need my request headers. So let's go back to Q&A Maker. So I have a couple of request headers. I have authorization, and that's going to be an endpoint key. So I'll highlight the whole thing, not taking the double quotes. I'll right click, select Copy, back over to API Tester. Now I'll click Add Request Header. And for the name is just authorization. So I'll press Ctrl V to paste the whole thing in. And then I'll cut everything all the way over to the colon after authorization. I'll press Ctrl X to cut that. Press Ctrl V in the value field to paste that value. Now I'll press the home key to go to the beginning of that field, and I'll delete the colon and the space at the start of that field, leaving just the endpoint key. Okay, so that's my endpoint key. Now I'll click Add Request Header. So back over to Q&A Maker, highlight content type, application JSON, right click, select Copy, back over to API Tester again. I'll press Ctrl V in the name field. And again, I'll take everything after the colon and press Ctrl X to cut it. Over in the value field, I'll press Ctrl V. And again, I'll remove the space in the colon before the value. Now for the post data, this is just a JSON payload, right? So let's go back to Q&A Maker. What I'll do is I'll grab everything between the curly braces. So I'll highlight everything between those curly braces, right click, select Copy. Now back over to API Tester again. I'll paste that in the post data field by pressing Ctrl V. And now for my question. So between the single quotes and the angle brackets where it says your question, I'll specify my question. And my question is, how do I upgrade my account? Okay, and that's formatted properly in JSON format. So let's go ahead, scroll down, and click Test. And this should come back with a 200 OK response. So let's go down and check the response headers, and there's the 200 OK response. So everything seems to have worked. And now for the response body, let's scroll over. So here's the answer. You can upgrade a business account or a personal account. It gave me a score of 100. If I scroll over, I'll see the two prompts, business and personal. Okay, and with that, we've successfully published and tested a Q&A knowledge base. In this demo, I'll create a bot for a knowledge base. I'm going to create a chat bot to link to my Q&A knowledge base using the Azure Bot service. I currently have a knowledge base that I created that's hosted over in Azure, and it's accessible via an endpoint that's published in Azure. Using the Azure Bot service, I can create an Azure web app to host the chatbot. Once that's completed, I can then do several things. I can integrate my chatbot into other services, for example, like Slack, email, or Microsoft Teams. And I can conveniently start creating the bot right from here in the Q&A Maker portal. To get started, I've signed into Q&A Maker with my Azure account. Now at the top of the page, I'll select My Knowledge Bases. I have one knowledge base. It's called MyKB. I'll click MyKB to open the knowledge base. It takes me to the Edit page. I'll click the Publish tab to go to the Publish page. This is the recommended practice, and it's important in case we've made any changes since the last time we published. So let's start by selecting Publish. All right, and it's done. Now to create our bot, we'll select Create Bot. At this point, you may be asked to re-authenticate to Azure. My authentication specs are cached, so I'm taken directly into Azure without having to re-authenticate again. One thing you'll notice right away is that certain metadata and configuration settings from Q&A Maker are already populated in the web app bot form, like the resource group, and we'll also see a Q&A auth key a little bit later. So now we'll go and specify the rest of the configuration settings on this form. The bot handle is a unique identifier for my bot. Now we can change that if we want. I'll leave it as is. For the subscription, I'll leave the free trial selected. And for the resource group, I'll leave it in the default resource group, which is Q&A-101. Now for the location, we can select any location. I'll leave West US selected. Now for pricing tier, it defaults to S1, which is 1,000 premium messages per unit. Now we don't need to go to S1. So clicking inside the field to open the drop-down, I'll select the F0 10K premium messages. So this is more than enough for our demo. Now for the app name, this defaults to the bot handle. Now if you hover over the information icon, you'll see information here relating to this value. It indicates that this will help form the bot's endpoint URL. So for example, the endpoint URL in our case will be Q&A-101-bot.azurewebsites.net. All right, scrolling down, we'll leave the default SDK language at C#. For the Q&A auth key, this is very important. This is the Q&A authorization key that is required in order to authorize requests from our bot to the Q&A knowledge base. So make sure that you note that Q&A authorization key, and you may want to copy it, but you can always find it later on as well in Azure. For the app service plan, I'll leave the default service plan as selected. Now for application insights, we're going to disable application insights for this demo. So I'll select off. And then finally, we have to create a Microsoft App ID and password. I'll click inside the field. And then I'll select Auto Create App ID and Password. You can, optionally, create a new one from scratch, but I'll select Auto Create App ID and Password. Okay, and now we're ready to create the bot, so I'll select Create. Now Azure validates my settings, and soon enough it starts provisioning and deploying resources for my bot. I'm redirected to my Azure Home or Dashboard page, and a notification appears indicating that the deployment is in progress. This shouldn't take very long, maybe a minute or so. Okay, and a notification appears indicating that deployment was successful. Now, under Recent Resources, I can select the Q&A-101 resource group, and that takes me to the resource group page where I can see that the Q&A-101-bot web app bot has been created. Okay, so that's it. We've successfully created a bot for our Q&A knowledge base. In this demo, we'll look at the Modular and Extensible Bot Framework SDK and extend it to enhance a conversational bot. All right, to get started, I've opened my browser and navigated to docs.microsoft.com/en-us/Azure/bot-service. This is the bot service documentation, including the Bot Framework SDK. With the Microsoft Bot Framework SDK and Azure Bot Service, we have all the tools that we need to build, test, deploy, and manage bots. Developers can create bots that understand natural language, integrate speech, seamlessly handle questions and answers, integrate rich elements into the user interface for our bots, and it's a modular and extensible SDK. Scrolling down the page under Languages, we can see that the Bot Framework SDK supports C#, JavaScript and TypeScript, Python, and Java. Scrolling down even further, under Related Technologies, we see some of the technologies that we can extend with the Microsoft Bot Framework SDK. This includes Power Virtual Agents, Virtual Assistants, Microsoft Teams, Language Understanding, that's Lewis, Q&A Maker, of course, Speech Service, and one of my favorites, Adaptive Cards. Okay, so on my second tab, I've navigated to Microsoft's Adaptive Cards website, and that's at adaptivecard.io/explorer/adaptivecard.html. I've navigated to the Schema Explorer here, so we can have a quick look at how adaptive cards are developed. So basically, adaptive cards have several properties, including type, version, body, actions, select action, fallback text, background image, and a whole lot more. Now, adaptive cards are platform agnostic. They're essentially declarative UI snippets, so no code. Rather, they're authored as simple JSON objects. So apps and services can openly exchange adaptive cards, and when they're integrated into a specific app, the JSON gets transformed into the native UI automatically. So it adapts to the environment it's delivered into, adapting to the look and feel of the host. Adaptive cards basically help developers design and integrate lightweight UI elements for all major platforms and frameworks. Okay, on my third tab, I've navigated to github.com/microsoft/botbuilder-samples. There's some really excellent complex samples here that you can learn from, and they're free, of course. So if you click on samples and click C#_.NET Core, you'll see a number of different samples here. As of this recording, over 80 samples. So what I've done is I've downloaded the zip of this repository. If I go back, I've selected code and I've downloaded the zip file. And basically, I'm going to have a look at one of the samples, and we'll have a quick look at that shortly. But before we do that, if you are going to be working with .NET and the SDK, you're going to want to download Visual Studio 2019, and Community Edition is free. So on my last tab, I've navigated to visualstudio.microsoft.com/downloads, and I'll select Free Download to download Community Edition. Now I've already done that and installed it. Now I'm going to go to my Downloads directory. I'm going to double-click to open the installer. I'll select Yes on the User Account Control dialog. And I'll select Continue. Okay, so the Visual Studio installer comes up. Now if I click Modify, because I've already got it installed. I just wanted to demonstrate here the workloads that I selected. So I've got the ASP.NET and web development workload and the Azure development workload. All right, so I'm going to close this window and I'm going to close the Visual Studio installer. All right, now let's go over to Visual Studio. The other thing you'll need to do is under Extensions, so go up to the Extensions menu, select Manage Extensions, and now search for Bot Framework. Okay, and there it is, Bot Framework v4 SDK templates for Visual Studio. So that's what I've installed, and that's what we're going to be using. Okay, now I'll select Close to close the Manage Extensions window. Okay, so now the Bot Builder sample that I've expanded from the GitHub samples that I downloaded is the Adaptive Cards Bot. And I've got that open here in Solution Explorer. And now under Bots, I'm going to click to open the Adaptive Cards CS. Okay, so basically we're using the Adaptive Cards Bot class, and then we define an array with the location of the adaptive cards. Now this is the beauty of it. Again, very simple. These are JSON objects. So under Resources, if I expand Resources over in Solution Explorer, I'll see my different JSON files. And these are basically JSON objects that define the adaptive cards. So if I click on one of them, let's go to Large Weather Card. And note that these are some of the same properties when we viewed the Schema Explorer on adaptivecards.io. So we have schema, type, version, speak, background image, and so on. So the beauty of this is that these JSON files get transformed into the native UI automatically, and they adapt to the environment that they're delivered into. So let's just make sure that this is going to compile and run. So I'll click IIS Express. Okay, the build was successful. Now we should see the web app open up in my default browser. A message is displayed telling us that the bot is ready. And when we want to go ahead and test, we can use the Bot Framework Emulator and this URL endpoint that I've highlighted to test locally. Okay, and with that, we've explored how to extend the Bot Framework to enhance the conversational bots. In this demo, I'll explore a couple of ways that we can test our web app bots and their use of knowledge bases. All right, to get started, I've opened my browser and I've signed into the Azure Portal. I'm on my home page, and under Recent Resources, I've located my web app bot. Now I will select the link, and that opens the web app bot blade for this bot. Okay, now notice under Bot Management an option to test in web chat. So I'll select Test in Web Chat, and the Azure Bot service then loads the web chat control and connects to my bot. So I'll see the hello and welcome message shortly, and there it is. Now to test the bot, I'll just specify one of my questions. How about upgrade? And it should come back with a multi-turn conversational response, and it sure does. Okay, so everything seems to be working here. The thing is, this is pretty preliminary, somewhat like smoke testing, whether the bot is actually going to work and be able to communicate with the Q&A Maker service and specifically the knowledge base that I designed. All right, now let's go over to the second tab that I've got open here. So the second tab is open to github.com/Microsoft/botframework-emulator. The Bot Framework Emulator allows us to test locally and remotely and do a little bit more in-depth testing at that. Scrolling down, under Download, I'll select the GitHub Releases link. This brings me to the GitHub Releases page. And scrolling down, you'll find the various platforms that are supported. So I've got a Windows setup executable. I've got a DMG installer for a Mac OS X environment, and I've got a Linux installer as well. I've already downloaded and installed the Bot Framework Emulator on my Windows 10 development machine. If you need to install it on your platform, just download the install for your platform, start it up, and follow the prompts. It's a really simple install. Now, on the third tab, I've navigated to ngrok.com/download, and that's ngrok.com. ngrok is a software package that can be used to provide network tunneling for Bot Framework Emulator. Essentially, we configured the emulator to use ngrok so that the Bot Framework Emulator can communicate with bots that are hosted remotely. All right, I've installed the Bot Framework Emulator, and I've pinned the program to the taskbar. So I'm going to click to open the Bot Framework Emulator. All right, now I will maximize the window. On the welcome page here, if I want to create a new bot configuration, I can easily do so by selecting Create a New Bot Configuration. This opens up the New Bot Configuration dialog where I can specify a name, the endpoint URL, and optionally the Microsoft App ID and Microsoft App Password, which I can find in the Azure Portal. And I'll need to do that if I'm going to test remotely. Now I've already got a couple of bots configured already, so I'm going to select Cancel to close this window. All right, now under My Bots on the welcome page, I can see the bots that I've configured, right? So Q&A-101-bot, that's hosted on Azure. So to run this, I had to set up ngrok. So how did I do that? Well, let's just go over to the menu and select the settings icon. And now I basically provide the path to ngrok on my machine. It's one single executable. I also checked the bypass ngrok for local addresses checkbox because I don't need tunneling for local addresses. Okay, and that's the important parts that I really wanted to go over here at this point. So I'm going to close the Emulator Settings tab. I'm going to select the Q&A-101-bot configuration, and that opens up the bot. And on the right-hand side, we have two panes. On the top pane, we can inspect the JSON responses here. On the bottom pane, we have individual log items, and I can follow through my conversation all the way from the moment that it's trying to make a connection to the different aspects of my conversation. So right now, let's go ahead and we'll type a message in the chat window. So I'll type upgrade. So just like in the Azure Portal, when I use the web chat control, I get the same responses here. And it's the response that I designed. All right, so everything is working fine here. Now, over in the right side of this window, in the responses panel, I can select each of these individual log items, and I can inspect the JSON for each individual response. Let's look at one that deliberately errors out. So I'm going to close this live chat tab. Now I'm going to open my cards bot. Now the cards bot is not running, so I should see an error. So I'll select the cards bot, and that's it exactly. We get an error. So if I wanted to drill down into that error, it's a 400 error. So I'll select 400. And in the JSON above, if I expand error, I'll see the exact error. And with that, we've explored a couple of ways that we can test our bots. In this demo, we'll configure and use logging and analytics. There are two ways to enable application monitoring for Azure App Services hosted applications. First, there's an agent-based application monitoring method, and this is using Application Insights Agent as it's known. This method is the simplest and requires no advanced configuration. This is also commonly called runtime monitoring. There's also manually instrumenting the application's code by installing the Application Insights SDK. This is the most powerful and customizable method, but it also requires a lot more configuration and maintenance. After all, you're instrumenting your code, so it involves code changes as well. You must add a dependency on the Application Insights SDK Nuget packages, and you must also manage updates to the latest version of the packages. All right, just a brief explanation of all the tabs that I've got open here. The first tab is for the Q&A-101 resource group. This resource group houses the bot and the app service that we're going to be working with in this demo. Okay, so up on the second tab, this is the Q&A 101 Web App Bot. In the resource menu, I'll select Activity Log. These are platform logs, and they provide detailed diagnostics and auditing information for any Azure resources and the Azure platform dependencies. That's not really what we're focusing on in this demo though, but you should just be aware. So for example, if I change the time span for the last month, so I'll select the last month option and select Apply, then I'll see the activity logs from the last month. And from here, I can drill down into the activity. Okay, over in the resource menu under Bot Management, find and select Analytics. And it plainly tells us that we haven't enabled Analytics via the Azure Application Insights yet. When we enable it for the app service, Analytics allows us to view the collected data and application insights. However, before we do that, we have to enable Analytics via Application Insights. To do this, we provide our Application Insights keys and ID on the settings page. And that's found over in the resource menu, again under Bot Management. So scrolling down to Analytics. So we've got the Application Insights instrument key, the Insights API key, as well as the application ID. Once we create the Application Insights resource, we'll be able to grab these three values. Okay, now let's go over to the app service for this bot. Now we could select the hyperlink on the notification saying click here to access Application Insights, or over in the resource menu, scroll down, and under Settings, select Application Insights. And now select Turn on Application Insights. All right, so now it's enabled, and a notification appears telling us that the app is going to be connected to an auto-created Application Insights resource. And it will be named Q&A-101-bot, and we'll have to access that later. Scrolling down, I've selected Create New Resource. We're going to create a new resource for Application Insights. And then scrolling further down, we have details on how we can instrument our application if we wanted to do so. So we have various settings that we can apply if we're going to instrument our code. We're not going to do that, so I'll just select Apply. And in the Apply Monitoring Settings dialog, I'll select Yes. And now Azure is applying those changes, and done. Now I'll click to close the notification. Scrolling up, I'll select Overview to bring us to the Overview page. Now I'll select the Q&A 101 Resource Group tab, and I'm going to refresh. And now I notice that there's an Application Insights resource. So I'll select the Q&A-101-bot Application Insights resource. And there's our instrumentation key in the Essentials block. So I'll click the Copy to Clipboard icon. Let's go over to our Web App Bot, and in the Settings working pane, I'll paste the instrumentation key into the instrumentation key field. Okay, now back to the Application Insights resource. Scrolling down in the resource menu, under Configure, I'll select API Access, and note right away there's my application ID, so I'll copy that to clipboard as well. Then back over to the bot, and I will paste that in the Application Insights application ID field by pressing Ctrl V. Now back to the Application Insights resource, and still on the API Access page. In the working pane, I can create an API key by selecting Create API Key. Okay, now on the Create API Key page, I'll provide a very brief description. I'll check the Read Telemetry checkbox, select Generate Key, and the key is generated for us. Now, we need to make sure that we copy this right now, because once we close this blade, we won't be able to grab it again. It's not stored in Azure. Now, back over in the Web App Bot blade, I'll paste that into the Application Insights API key. Now, if there are other settings that I wanted to set, like OAuth connection settings or anything like that, I could select Add Setting, but I'm not going to do anything like that right now. We don't need that. So up at the top on the command bar, I'll select Save, and those values are saved. Okay, now let's see what comes up when I select Analytics in the Resource menu under Bot Management. The Analytics page does come up, but I have no data because I've just enabled Application Insights. And Application Insights will only collect data from the moment that it's enabled. So we don't have a lot of data here. Fortunately, I've got another bot that I've already added Application Insights into, and let's go and have a look at that one. So I'll select the fourth tab, and that's my pub-bot-demo bot channel registration, which is like my app service. Here, I'll select Analytics under Bot Management. And note now I do have some data here. This retention graph tracks the number of users who sent a message and then came back later and sent another one. This chart displays a rolling 10-day window. And because I've only been collecting data for about 12 hours or so, I'm not going to see a lot of data here. If we came back to this in a week or two, we would see more data on a 10-day rolling time frame. Okay, scrolling down, now we have the users graph. The users graph tracks how many users access the bot over each channel in the specified time frame. And scrolling down some more, we have the activities graph, and it tracks how many activities were sent and received over each channel in the specified time frame. Okay, now I'll click the rightmost tab, and that is my Application Insights resource for pub-bot-demo. I'm on the overview page, and scrolling down, I see some useful graphs which were generated from Application Insights data that's been collected. Okay, now scrolling back up, if I select Logs from the command bar, this opens up a Queries dialog where I can specify a certain type of query. I can specify alerts, browsing data, performance, report failures, and this is all to do with topics. Under Queries, I can also select queries by category, resource type, solution, and of course I have topic selected. And as an example, let's just run a response time trend. In the response time trend box, I'll select Run. That opens up this query with the code behind the query and the results and chart below. We could also select the chart type. For example, I could select stacked column, and scrolling down I've got other settings as well, including the aggregation type. Now up in the code window on line 5, I could change this to, for example, let's say 4 hours. So I'll highlight 12 and press 4 to replace it with 4 hours. And now if I wanted to save that to a different file, I could save it by clicking Save and giving it a new name and then saving it. I'm not going to do that now. I'm just going to run this query that I've modified, so I'll select Run. And we have our graph based on a much shorter time frame. I could also choose to display a result set as a table instead of the graph. Okay, so just to review then, because my Application Insights resource for pub-bot-demo has been collecting data for several hours, my Analytics page for the pub-bot-demo bot channel has data. So the Analytics displays that data. And over in the web app bot that we just configured with Analytics, we haven't been collecting data for long enough, and there hasn't been enough activity with this chat bot to show worthwhile data in the Analytics page. As time and activity accrue, though, more data will be collected by Application Insights, and we'll see more data on this analytics page. And more data will accrue over time in our logs if we're saving our logs, so that we'll have even more data with which to analyze the activity going on with our bot. And so with that, we have successfully configured and used logging and analytics for our chatbot. In this demo, I'll publish a bot that can be consumed by external and channel sources. Okay, to get started, I've signed into the Azure Portal. The first step we'll have to take is to create an API app that we can deploy our bot into. So on my homepage, I'll select Create a Resource. Now I'll search the marketplace for API app. And I'll select API app, and I'll select Create. Now, for the name, I'm going to call my API app pub-bot-demo. The subscription defaults to free trial. I'll leave that. The resource group defaults to a new resource group with the same name as my app. I'll leave that as is. For the app service plan, I'll select inside the field. I'll create a new app service plan. So I'll select Create New, and I'll give it the same name as my app. The location defaults to Central US. I'll click inside the field and I'll select East US. And for pricing tier, it defaults to S1 Standard. That's overkill for my demo. So I'll click inside the field and I'll select Dev Test, and this is for less demanding workloads. And I'll select F1, which is more than enough for my demo. And I'll select Apply, and I'll select OK. Now for Application Insights, I'm going to click inside the field and I'm going to disable Application Insights. I don't need that for this demo. So I'll select Disable, I'll select Apply. Now I'll select Create. Now Azure validates my configuration, and now deployment is in progress. Now when deployment is finished, we'll move on to the next step. And for that, we'll need to register a bot with the Bot Connector service. Okay, so there, it's done. Now I'll select Go to Resource. Okay, and here under URL is the URL that we're going to deploy our bot into. Okay, so now back to Home. So I'll select Home. I'll select Create a Resource. What I'm going to do is I'm going to search for Bot Channels Registration. Note that Bot Channels Registration is an AI and machine learning resource. So we could drill down into AI machine learning and look for it, but I just find it easier to search from here. So Bot Channels Registration. I'll select Bot Channels Registration. And basically with Bot Channels Registration, we're registering our bot with the Azure Bot service. Okay, so I'll select Create. For the bot handle, I'll give it the same name as my app. The subscription I'll leave at free trial. For a resource group, I'll click inside the field and I'll select pub-bot-demo that was created in our last step. I'll leave the location at East US. The pricing tier again defaults to S1. I'll click inside the field and I'll select the free F0 pricing tier. And now the messaging endpoint. Now this is very important. We need to make sure that the messaging endpoint obviously is correct. And so we created our app called pub-bot-demo. So we're going to deploy into https://pub-bot-demo.azurewebsites.net. But we also need to add a /API/messages onto the end of that. I'll choose to turn Application Insights off, and I'll select Create. Okay, and deployment is in progress and done. So now I'm going to click to go to the resource, and I need to do a couple more things. First, I'll select Settings in the left menu, and scrolling down, make note of the Microsoft App ID. So I'm going to highlight this right now, and I'll press Control-C to copy it. Now we're also going to select Manage, and we're going to create a new client secret. So scrolling down, there is a current client secret. I'm going to delete that one, so I'll select the delete icon and I'll confirm by selecting yes. Now I'll select new client secret. I'll leave the default expires in 1 year and select add. And so now we have a new password. So this is our client secret, aka password. We'll need to specify that in app settings when we create a bot over in Visual Studio. Okay, down on the taskbar, I'll select the Visual Studio icon to open Visual Studio. Now I'm going to create a new bot, so I'll select File, point to New, and I'll select Project. For project type, make sure that AI Bots is selected. And now scroll down to the bottom, and this is a Bot Framework v4 resource. And we're going to select Echo Bot. So this is going to be a pretty simple bot. So Echo Bot, Bot Framework v4, .NET Core 3.1. Select Next. Now for a project name, I'm going to call mine pub-bot-demo. I'll leave the default location and I'll select Create. We'll have to change app settings. So I'll select App Settings. And now for Microsoft App ID, between the quotes, I'll place my cursor and press Control-V to place the Microsoft App ID in there. And now let's go back over to Azure briefly. And now I'll select to copy the client secret or password. So I'll select the Copy to Clipboard icon. Down in the taskbar, I'll select Visual Studio again. And now I'll paste that client secret or app password between the quotes for Microsoft App Password. Okay, now I'll save my changes. Now I'll right-click the project, select Publish. Now the target is Azure, so I'll leave that selected. Select Next. The specific target is Azure App Service for Windows. I'll select Next. Okay, and now we're going to search for the app service instance that we're going to use, and it's going to be the one which should be obvious that I just created, right? But make sure that you're signed into the right Azure account, okay? Now I'll expand pub-bot-demo, and I'll select the pub-bot-demo app service instance, and select Finish. Okay, looking pretty good, but one last step. The site URL is listed as an HTTP site. Now this has to be a secure endpoint, so I'm going to select Edit. I'll change that to HTTPS, and we can choose to validate the connection if we want, so I'll select Validate Connection, and the connection's been validated. Excellent. So I'll select Save, and now I'll select Publish. So now Visual Studio is going to package up my project basically and deploy it and publish to the app service that we just pointed to. Okay, if we select Web Publish Activity tab on the output panel, we'd see that it was published successfully. And now let's go over to Azure. So down on the taskbar, I'll click the browser icon to go to Azure. There's the bot that was published, pub-bot-demo.azurewebsites.net. I'll just close that. We don't need that open. Okay, so now in here, I'll select the pub-bot-demo bot channel. And now under Bot Management, I'll select Test in Web Chat. And it connects to our chat bot. And now it should echo what I type. And it did. All right, so we've successfully published a bot that can be consumed by external and channel sources. In this demo, I'll connect my bot to a standard channel. Okay, to get started, I've signed into the Azure Portal, and I've also signed into Outlook.com with one of my emails. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set up the email channel for one of my simple bots. And this is a bot that I published earlier. So here on the home page in Azure Portal, under Recent Resources, I'm going to select the pub-bot-demo bot channels registration. Now under Bot Management, I'll select Test in Web Chat. Now this is a really simple echo bot, so everything that I type, it's going to respond with the exact same thing. It will say echo colon and whatever I typed. So I'll type a message. So I'll type, what did you say? And the bot responds with echo colon, what did you say? All right, so we know that it works on the web channel. So now, again, under bot management, I'll select channels. And this shows that I have one channel that I'm connected to right now. That's the web chat channel. And we just tested that, so we know that that's true. I have a number of other channels that I can add here. I've got Cortana, I've got Direct Line, I've got Microsoft Teams, and then underneath, I've got a number of other standard channels. So I'm going to select email. And in the configure email blade, I'll enter my email credentials. Now keep in mind that this has to be an Office 365 email. Okay, so I'll enter my email address and my password, and I'll select Save. And the notification appears indicating that it's been saved. Now at this point, note that it's also enabled, but I could disable it. I can also delete the channel by coming back here and deleting the channel at some point in the future. Okay, so I'm going to click Cancel to get out of here. And now I see back on the Connect to Channels blade that indeed I have a channel named Email, and its health is running. So it's ready to go. So what's going to happen now is that the bot is going to respond when I send an email with a message in the subject line. So I'll go over to my email tab, and I'm going to create a new message. So I'll select New Message, and I'm going to send this to the email that I just set up. And in the subject line, I'll add, what did you say? And I'll select Send. Okay, so that email has been sent off. So shortly, within a few seconds, I should see another email in my inbox from that email address, which is acting as a channel with my bot. And there it is. So it came back from that same email, and it echoed, what did you say? So I can select never mind, for example, to respond, send that email again, and I'll get another email back shortly saying the same thing, never mind. And there is the subsequent email. Now, once we're done with that, we can go back to Azure and we can edit. So I'll select Edit beside the email channel, and now I'll delete that channel. I'll select Delete Channel, and in the Confirm dialog, I'll select Yes, delete it. All right, and now it shows that it's gone. So that's it. It's that easy to set up standard channels with bots in the Azure Bot service. In this demo, I'm going to connect an application directly to a bot using the Direct Line channel. Okay, to get started, I've signed into Azure. I'm going to configure a Direct Line channel for this bot that I have called pub-bot-demo. So under Recent Resources, I'll select the name pub-bot-demo. Okay, and now let's just test this and make sure it works. So I'll select Test in Web Chat. Okay, and now this is just an echo bot. So whatever I type, it's going to echo back. So I'll type, what did you say? And it responds accordingly. Okay, excellent. Now, under Bot Management, if I select Channels, there's already one channel set up. Now that's the web chat channel. And we just tested the web chat channel when I selected Test in Web Chat under Bot Management. So now what I'm going to do is set up a direct channel. And when we add a direct channel, the bot framework generates secret keys. So our client applications use these keys to authenticate the Direct Line API requests used for communicating with a bot. So I'll select Direct Line channel. With each bot, there is a default site. And we associate a secret key with each of the direct line channels that we want to employ. So if I have an application running, say, in the console and another application, maybe it's a mobile app, then I can associate those with different secret keys and different sites. So I'm just going to use the default site for this demo. There are 2 secret keys associated with this default site. Now I'll click Show beside the first secret key, and then I'll highlight the secret key and press Ctrl-C to copy it. And now I'll select Done. Now I'm going to use that to connect from a little client app. It's just a basic console app, and I got it from GitHub. It's one of Microsoft's bot framework examples. So basically, you go to github.com/Microsoft/botframework-directline-.net. You can download this repository. The one that I'm going to use, if I drill into samples and then core-directline, I'm basically taking only the direct line client here. Okay, so now let's go down to the taskbar. I'll select the Visual Studio icon to open Visual Studio, and I've got this direct line sample client open. I've got 2 files open. I've got the app config file open, and I've got the program.cs file open. So first, I'm going to paste in line 4 my direct line secret. That's the one that I just copied. So I'll insert my cursor between the double quotes and press Ctrl-V to paste that secret in. Now, the bot ID is just simply pub-bot-demo. Okay, so I'll save those changes. Now, one of the things that you have to do here with this sample is you have to set the .NET framework in properties to 4.6, or it won't work. It will error out. And how do you do that? Well, you right-click on the project, select Properties, and under Target Framework, select .NET Framework 4.6. Okay, so now let's have a look at the program file. That's program.cs. So first, the reason why we can actually do this and use direct line is because I'm using in line 8 the Microsoft.bot.connector.directLine namespace. So then later on line 25, I'm instantiating a new direct line client. And when we run this app, we're going to see a familiar console with a command prompt. And we'll be able to issue API requests in the form of messages to our chatbot, just like any other chat medium. And we'll see the responses come back in the console. And if we want to get out of the app, we just type a lowercase exit. Otherwise, it's going to connect to our Echo bot, and it's going to echo whatever I type. So let's go ahead, let's run this little client. Okay, so there's the command prompt. So now I should be able to type something and then see that echoed back. I'll type, "What did you say?" and press enter. And of course, the hello and welcome came up afterwards. But here I see the echo, "What did you say?" If I'd waited a little bit longer, the hello and welcome message would have come up anyway. Okay, so let's try another one then. How about stop? Okay, it just echoes that. Now what about lowercase exit? And it closes down the console. So with that, we've successfully directly connected to a bot using the direct line channel. In this video, we'll explore the purposes and uses of a digital assistant. A digital assistant is a type of conversational AI bot that provides conversational-based assistance personalized for a specific user. Digital assistants can draw from multiple sources and present information in a way that is contextually accurate. They can also be programmed to perform a wide variety of tasks, sometimes known as skills. Digital assistants can take advantage of a number of AI or cognitive-based technologies, including computer vision services, and they typically use natural language processing and natural language understanding to give them the broad capabilities of processing and parsing what the end user is speaking or typing, and then generating accurate responses. In general terms, a digital assistant can provide an end user with access to their contacts and calendars for scheduling. They can provide personal information management services to end users, and can even synchronize with third-party services. Essentially, digital assistants can do almost everything that a human assistant can do. So what's the purpose of a digital assistant? Well, as mentioned earlier, digital assistants use natural language processing and natural language understanding. They leverage this technology to respond to human language queries. Using these technologies, they can conveniently complete basic tasks for end users, like scheduling meetings or handling calls, and they also save users a lot of time by filtering or finding knowledge quickly and easily and presenting it in a contextually accurate manner. So what kind of things can a digital assistant accomplish? Well, digital assistants can perform a variety of tasks for users. For example, a virtual assistant can be programmed to handle incoming phone calls, and some advanced ones can even initiate calls. A virtual assistant can be configured to send and respond to emails. They can take notes, and further, they can transcribe and even translate and distribute notes. And they can be a vast resource of knowledge for finding virtually anything on the web, or by accessing any other configured sources of information as required to accomplish their tasks. From a business perspective, virtual assistants in one form or another can be provided from the business to a consumer or an employee, or, for example, built into a specific item. Consider, digital assistants can be integrated in an automotive setting to provide directions or guidance on how to get to some specific destination. You're likely familiar with this already in the form of GPS nav integrated into your car or truck. In an enterprise setting, digital assistants can help book hotel arrangements, can schedule and arrange for conference calls, team meetings, or Zoom sessions, and similar related conferences. In retail, virtual assistants can be used to discover where an item is in the store, or to demo some specific product or service. And in the tourism industry, digital assistants have found their way into technology in the form of guides, alerts or alarms, and concierge services. Digital assistants obviously need some physical medium or device through which they can interact with humans, and the first one I'll mention is the ubiquitous smartphone. For example, on iPhones, we have Siri, we have Google Assistant on Android smartphones, and Bixby on Samsung smartphones. I'd also like to mention Cortana here because although not in a smartphone setting, it is Microsoft's digital assistant, but is now relegated to Surfaces, laptops, and computers running Windows 10. You'll also find digital assistants on wearable technology like watches or some forms of wrist attachments, and in other wearable tech, eyewear, including augmented reality glasses. And on the bleeding edge, we have implanted earbuds, which are essentially cyborg-based interfaces. There are specific building blocks of any digital assistant, and these include, for starters, any knowledge sources. The digital assistant will need access to whatever sources of knowledge it requires to do its job. This could be general knowledge sources like the internet. It could also be sources of data from particular databases, or even manuals, for example, PDF manuals. Next, a digital assistant must have a set of defined tasks that it understands how to do. You'll often hear these referred to as skills. So, for example, a defined task could be access and editing capabilities to a calendar, or understanding how to communicate with some customized data source via an API. Next, a digital assistant must have some way to interact with users for managing user input. This could include typing, as in a chat window, but could also include speaking, tapping, or adaptive cards for acquiring user input. This could also include specific channels for communicating and receiving input, for example, channels like Slack, Microsoft Teams, or email. And finally, a digital assistant must have the ability to communicate via devices. These are collectively known as human-to-machine interfaces. We've already discussed some of these in the form of, for example, smartphones, automotive devices like GPS nav, but could also include smart home devices and smart speakers. In this demo, I'll create a simple virtual assistant leveraging Azure's Bot Service and Bot Builder SDK v4. Okay, to get started, I've opened my browser and I've navigated to some sites that we'll need to access in order to download some of the prerequisites for this demo. The first thing I'm going to do, though, is go down to my taskbar. I'm going to right-click on the Powershell Core icon. I'll explain what Powershell Core is a little later in this demo. For now, I'll right-click the Powershell Core icon and I'll select Run as Administrator. And when the User Account Control dialog appears, I'll select Yes. Now, I'll maximize the Powershell Core window. Okay, so the first thing I'll do here is I'll clear. And the reason I opened this is because the first step is to ensure that we have .NET Core SDK version 3.1 installed. And to do that, I'll type .NET-list-runtimes. Then press Enter, and it reports that I definitely do have .NET Core 3.1 installed. Okay, now after each command, I'm going to type clear and press Enter, and I won't keep saying I'm going to type clear and press Enter. I'll just do it. Okay, now let's return to the web browser. So down on the taskbar, I'll click the web browser icon to bring up my browser. On the first tab, I've just signed into the Azure Portal. On the second tab, I've navigated to nodejs.org. We'll need to install Node.js, and the current LTS version is 14.15.4. I recommend that you locate, download, and install the most recent LTS version. I'm not going to step through the process of installing all of these tools and programs in this demo. They're very simple installations, but I will show you where to find all of these prerequisites, and that's why I have all of these tabs open. So let's carry on. Okay, and the reason why you want Node.js is because you need the Node Package Manager so that later on we can install the Bot Framework CLI tools and the Bot Skills CLI tool, both of which we will need later on to deploy our virtual assistant. On my third tab, I've got the GitHub site for Powershell Core open, and that's at github.com/PowerShell/PowerShell. Powershell Core is not PowerShell that you're likely familiar with. PowerShell is included with the Windows operating system and is installed by default. PowerShell Core must be downloaded and installed separately. And when installed, it doesn't overwrite PowerShell. You'll still have both programs on your system. PowerShell Core is a cross-platform version of PowerShell. Now to find the download, on the right-hand side of the page, scroll down, find Releases, and it will have the latest label attached to it. Next is the Azure CLI, and you'll need a minimum version 2.2. The current version is 2.17.1. The Azure CLI is basically a collection of commands that can be used to create and manage Azure resources. The CLI is available across Azure services and is designed so that we can quickly get up and working with Azure with the emphasis on automation. To find the installer for the Azure CLI, just navigate to docs.microsoft.com/enus/CLI/Azure, select Install, Windows or install whatever platform you're using. I just selected install Windows and it brings me to this page. Then I scrolled down and located the current release and selected it to download the MSI for Azure CLI. And on the last tab, I've navigated to github.com/Microsoft/bot-framework-emulator. And this is where you'll download the Bot Framework Emulator. Again, on the right-hand side, scroll down, find releases, and the most recent release will have the latest label. Okay, so now let's go back to Powershell Core. So down on the taskbar, I'll select the Powershell icon. And now I'll download and install the Bot Framework CLI tools. And to do that, I'm going to invoke npm. So I'll type npm install -g for global bot dispatch space at Microsoft/bot-framework-CLI. Okay, so that will install both tools. Press enter. Okay, so now the Bot Framework CLI tools have been installed. The next thing we need to do is install the Bot Skills CLI tool. And to do that, I'll type npm install -g bot skills at latest. And then I'll press enter. Okay, and now the Bot Skills CLI tool has been installed. Now let's go over to Visual Studio. So down on the taskbar, I'll select the Visual Studio icon to open Visual Studio. All right, the first thing you'll need to do now in Visual Studio is to install the Virtual Assistant and Skill Templates SDK v4. We do that by selecting the Extensions menu and selecting the Manage Extensions option. On the Manage Extensions dialog, search for Virtual Assistant and find Virtual Assistant and Skill Templates. The green check mark indicates that I've already installed this, but you'll want to install it yourself. Now, when you do install it, what's going to happen here is you're not going to see a close button. You're going to see a download button. So you want to download that, and then you'll see a notification indicating that the installation will occur when all the Visual Studio windows have been closed. So essentially, you'll need to close Visual Studio. It will be updated, and then you can restart it. Okay, so I'll select Close to close the Manage Extensions dialog. Now, with that installed, when you navigate to File, point to New, and select Project, you'll have a new Virtual Assistant template. And now to find that, just do a search for templates. Start typing Virtual Assistant. Select the Virtual Assistant template, then select Next. Next is to give your project a name. I will call mine MVA 101 for my Virtual Assistant 101. Okay, and now you can select a location. I'll just leave the default location, and I'll select Create. Okay, and now it's ready. Now the last step is to build the project to restore the Nuget packages. So in Solution Explorer, right-click the project and select Build from the context menu. And the build succeeded. Okay, so that's it. At this point, we've successfully installed all the prerequisites, and we've created a very simple virtual assistant from the Virtual Assistant template. The next steps will be to deploy and test. But for this demo, we're now finished. In this demo, I'll deploy a virtual assistant to Azure and then test its functionality using the Bot Framework Emulator. On my development machine, I have Visual Studio 2019 open, and I've opened my virtual assistant project. I've created this bot using the Virtual Assistant and Skill Templates SDK v4. My first action will be to open Powershell Core as administrator. So down on the taskbar, I'll right-click the Powershell Core icon and select Run as Administrator. And then when the User Account Control dialog appears, I'll select Yes. Now I'll type Clear and press Enter to clear the console. I like to do this after each command. So from here on in this demo, I'll do that, but I won't continue to say, now I'll type clear and press enter. I'll just do it. All right, next step is to log into Azure. And for that, I'll use the Azure CLI command AZ login. So at the prompt, I'll type AZ login. Now that opens up an authentication form for Microsoft Azure in my default browser. My account sign-in is cached because I've been here several times in this browser. So I'll just select my account. And now I'm logged in. I could go back to Powershell Core. So down on the taskbar, I'll select the Powershell Core icon again. When you come back to PowerShell Core, you'll recognize right away that there's output. First, output indicating that you've successfully signed in. And then there's some JSON response that's echoed to the console, which includes information about the account that you've signed in with. Next, I need to navigate to the project folder for this virtual assistant. So I'll type cd, users, my name, Joe, source, repos, MVA101, 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 and press enter. All right, now if I do a listing, I'll see the various folders and files that make up this project. Now I'm ready to run the deployment script that comes with the virtual assistant template. That script is in a subdirectory off of my current directory that I'm in right now. It's in deployment, scripts, and its name is deploy.ps1. And you might not be aware, but I'm using the tab key to autocomplete my statements. Now pressing enter, and the first piece of information that I'm asked for is the bot name. I'll specify MVA101. Now, for the Azure Resource Group region, I'll specify West US. Now, I'm asked for a password. Now, this password must be 16 characters long, must contain at least one special character, and it must also contain at least one numeric character. Okay, so I've specified my password. Now, the next question, create a new Lewis authoring resource. I'll type Y and press enter. And now for Lewis authoring region, I'll specify West US here and press enter. So the first thing it does is create a resource group, then it validates the deployment, and then it starts setting up all the services. And like it says, this could take a while. Now we'll fast forward through this part of the deployment, but just be aware that this could take 2 or 3 minutes, or maybe even a little longer, depending on how busy it is on Azure. All right, so now we're finished. Now that the deploy script is finished, let's go over to Azure Portal and check out some of these resources that were created for us. So down on the taskbar, I'll click the Firefox icon to bring up my web browser. Now I'm signed into the Azure Portal, and I'm going to select Resource Groups. In the list of resource groups is my MVA101 resource group for my virtual assistant. So I'm going to click on MVA101, and it opens up my resource group blade for MVA101. There were 2 deployments, both succeeded, and in the bottom part of this blade are all the resources that are associated with this resource group. And there are several. Okay, so now let's open Bot Framework Emulator to start testing our app. So down on the taskbar, I'll select the Bot Framework Emulator icon to open Bot Framework Emulator, and up it comes. I'll maximize this window. And now we need to go over to Visual Studio and do a couple of things. We're going to look into appsettings.json to get the Microsoft App ID and password. And we've also got to start our app. Okay, so first I'll open appsettings.json. I will highlight Microsoft App ID on line 7. Excluding the quotes, I'll press Ctrl-C to copy. I'll click IIS Express in the toolbar to launch the app, and it's going to open the web app in a new browser window. Note the URL for the virtual assistant template in the address bar The actual endpoint URL will consist of this part of the URL, but we'll also add /API/messages to the end of this URL, and that will be our virtual assistant's endpoint URL. Okay, so now over to the Bot Framework Emulator. So I'll select the Bot Framework Emulator in the taskbar. I'll select Open Bot. Now I have several bot URLs cached inside the Bot Framework Emulator. So what I'll do is I'll select the first one. That's our actual endpoint URL for this virtual assistant bot. Okay, now I'll put my cursor inside the Microsoft App ID field, press Ctrl-V to paste that in, and I'll type my Microsoft App password in directly because I know that. And I'll select Connect. And now it's connecting to the bot. And success. So the bot is up and running. Now it shows a couple of links. These will open in a web browser for documentation and for skills documentation. I'm also asked a question by the bot. What is your name? So I'll type my name in the type your message field. And the virtual assistant responds with, pleased to meet you. What can I do for you? I'm going to ask the bot who made it. So I'll type who made you? And the bot responds with, people created me. Now in the right lower panel, you'll notice that the bot was accessing Lewis for language understanding, also accessing Q&A Maker, and then creating the message and echoing that back to me. All right, and with that, we've successfully deployed and tested a virtual assistant. So in this course, we've created an Azure machine learning conversation bot service that can use a knowledge base to answer questions. We did this by exploring uses for a conversational bot, both business and personal, by creating and training a knowledge base using Q&A Maker, by publishing, testing, and creating a bot for a knowledge base, extending a bot framework, and testing and publishing a bot. We also configured and used logging and analytics. We connected bots to standard channels and an application. And we explored the uses of and created a simple personal digital assistant. In our next course, we'll use the Azure Machine Learning Computer Vision Service to train a model to identify or classify objects in images or videos.